5:34 a.m. hours, Strait of Hormuz, February 13, 2026. The USS Gerald R. Ford, the world's largest aircraft carrier, cuts through glassy Persian Gulf waters at 22 knots, her massive electromagnetic catapults silent beneath the pre-dawn darkness. 75 combat aircraft rest on her deck, crews conducting routine pre-flight checks in the amber glow of deck lighting. Then the southern horizon erupts with fire. Radar contacts multiply across every screen in the carrier strike group. The ANSP Y6 air search radar, aboard USS Arleigh Burke, detects them first. 43 inbound small craft, accelerating from Iranian territorial waters at 38 knots. Range, 27 nautical miles. Closure rate, catastrophic. Within seconds, thermal imaging confirms what tactical officers feared most. Each vessel carries anti-ship cruise missiles in launch configuration. The scale of the threat eclipses every naval engagement doctrine written since the Millennium Challenge exercises of 2002. This is not a probe. This is an attempted annihilation. A Ford's Combat Information Center transforms into controlled chaos. Threat boards light red across 14 separate tracks. The tactical action officer keys the battle circuit, his voice cutting through the tension with calculated precision. All units, weapons tight to weapons free. Engage all hostile contacts. Authorization, Papa Whiskey 7. The strike group commander, Rear Admiral Elizabeth Harrington, aboard the Ford, watches the tactical display with decades of naval warfare experience, condensing into a single assessment. Iran has committed to total escalation. The rules of engagement dissolve. What follows will either validate American naval supremacy or shatter it in full view of the world's cameras. At 5:37 a.m. hours, the first defensive measures activate. 4 F-18E Super Hornets, already airborne on combat air patrol 40 miles northeast of the carrier, receive target data through SecureLink 16 data links. Their APG-79 active electronically scanned array radars lock onto the lead Iranian craft. Weapons officers arm AGM-65E Maverick missiles, laser-guided munitions designed to vaporize small boats with surgical efficiency. The lead pilot, call sign Hammer 1, achieves weapons solution at 18 nautical miles. Hammer flight, rifle. 4 Mavericks drop from wing pylons, motors igniting in brilliant light contrails against the purple dawn. Flight time, 47 seconds. At 5:38 a.m. hours, the missiles impact. The lead Iranian boat disintegrates in a fuel-air explosion that registers on seismic monitors 120 miles away. 3 more boats erupt in rapid succession, flaming debris arcing across the water in parabolic trajectories. But 43 boats have become 39. The mathematics of the engagement remain catastrophic. The Ford strike group has seconds, not minutes. USS Arleigh Burke and USS Wayne Meyer, Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, positioned in defensive picket formation, unleash their primary offensive systems. The MEK-41 vertical launch systems cycle open. RIM-162 evolve Sea Sparrow missiles, erupt from their cells in rapid-fire salvos, 6 missiles launching every 8 seconds. The weapons employ active radar homing, each missile autonomously selecting Iranian craft based on threat priority algorithms. Engagement range, 14 nautical miles. The missiles cross the distance in 22 seconds, traveling at Mach 3.5. The Persian Gulf sky becomes a lattice of white rocket trails converging on their targets with geometric inevitability. At 5:39 a.m. hours, the first wave of defensive missiles finds its marks. 11 Iranian boats explode within a 3-second window. Fireballs bloom across the water like orchestrated pyrotechnics, each detonation triggering secondary explosions as onboard munitions cook off. Burning fuel spreads across the surface, creating a barrier of flame 300 yards wide. But the Iranian attack boats split formation, dispersing across a 5-mile front. 28 remain. Range: 9 nautical miles. Time to weapons range: 4 minutes. The Ford's E-D Advanced Hawkeye, orbiting at 25,000 feet, coordinates the expanding battle with godlike situational awareness. Its PY-9 radar tracks every surface contact, airborne missile, and electronic emission across 3 million cubic miles of battle space. The aircraft's mission crew detects a new threat: Iranian coastal radar sites, activating targeting protocols. Intelligence analysis indicates preparation for land-based anti-ship missile launches. The Hawkeye transmits encrypted warnings. The battlefield expands beyond the immediate surface threat into a multi-domain engagement spanning sea, air, and electromagnetic spectrums. At 5:42 a.m. hours, the Ford launches its full strike package, 8 F-18E Super Hornets, catapult from the electromagnetic launch system at 2-second intervals, each aircraft accelerating from 0 to 165 miles per h-hour in under 3 seconds. The pilots experience 3.2 G-forces, their bodies pressed into ejection seats as the aircraft claw for altitude. Within 90 seconds, the strike package forms up at 80 feet, weapons armed, targeting data streaming into cockpit displays. Their mission: obliterate every remaining surface contact before Iranian boats reach cruise missile launch range. Failure is not a tactical setback. Failure means the Ford takes hits. The Super Hornets divide into hunter-killer pairs, each team assigned sectors of the battle space. At 5:44 a.m. hours, they begin their attack runs, descending to 400 feet above the water at 520 knots. Pilots acquire visual contact with the Iranian boats, white wakes visible against dark water. A GM-65 Mavericks and a GM-84 Harpoon missiles launch in coordinated salvos. The weapons impact with overlapping timing, each explosion triggering the next in a cascading wave of destruction. 14 Iranian boats disappear in a 45-second period. The remaining 14 scatter, some reversing course toward Iranian waters, others accelerating directly at the Ford in apparent suicide runs. At 5:46 a.m. hours, the USS Wayne Meyer deploys its close-in weapon system. The Phalanx CIWS, a radar-guided 20mm Gatling gun capable of firing 4,500 rounds per minute, locks onto the nearest Iranian craft at 1.8 nautical miles. The gun mount swivels with mechanical precision, tracking the boat's erratic, evasive maneuvers. At 1.2 nautical miles, the weapon fires. Depleted uranium rounds shred the Iranian boat's hull below the waterline, punching through fiberglass and aluminum like tissue paper. The boat lists violently, flooding in seconds. It sinks stern first, disappearing beneath the surface in under 20 seconds. No survivors emerge. At 5:47 a.m. hours, the tactical situation reaches its apex. 11 Iranian boats remain operational. 3 have achieved cruise missile launch parameters. The Ford's defensive systems detect missile motor ignitions. 3 C-802 anti-ship cruise missiles launch from Iranian boats at 6 nautical miles, their solid rocket boosters propelling them to 650 miles per h-hour. Flight time to the Ford, 6 minutes. The carrier's ANACLQ 32 electronic warfare suite immediately activates, transmitting high-power jamming signals designed to corrupt the missile's guidance systems. Simultaneously, The Ford's rolling airframe missile launchers train on the inbound threats. The RAM system, designed as the last-ditch defense against sea-skimming missiles, fires 3 interceptors. Each RAM missile costs $900,000. A Ford's survival is priceless. At 5:48 a.m. hours, the RAM interceptors engage. The first RAM destroys an Iranian missile at 2.1 nautical miles, the explosion creating a debris cloud that forces the second Iranian missile into a ballistic trajectory. It arcs skyward, guidance systems disrupted, then plunges into the sea 800 yards from the Ford. The third Iranian missile maintains its course, skimming 15 feet above the water at 0.9 Mach. A Ford's second RAM interceptor achieves kinetic kill at 0.6 nautical miles. Fragments from the destroyed missile rain across the water, several pieces impacting the Ford's hull below the waterline. Damage control teams report minor flooding in a ballast tank. No casualties, no mission degradation. The final 8 Iranian boats die in the next 90 seconds. MH-60 RC Hawk helicopters, armed with AGM-114 Hellfire missiles and Mark 54 torpedoes, engage the scattered craft from multiple vectors. The Hellfires, laser-guided with pinpoint accuracy, strike with surgical lethality. Each missile transforms an Iranian boat into shrapnel and vapor. 2 boats attempt to surrender, crews waving white fabric. The rules of engagement, revised 72 hours earlier under direct presidential authorization, permit no quarter-4 vessels that initiated hostile action. The Seahawks complete their engagement at 5:51 a.m. hours, 17 minutes after initial contact. The last Iranian boat sinks beneath burning fuel slicks. The silence that follows feels unnatural. A Ford's air wing orbits in defensive patterns, pilots scanning for additional threats that never materialize. Damage assessment teams move through the carrier, finding only superficial damage. Scorched paint, minor hull fragments, mech-event in non-critical areas, shattered windows in the island's superstructure. 0 American casualties. 0 American aircraft lost. 0 American vessels damaged beyond immediate operational capability. Iranian losses: 43 attack boats destroyed, estimated 387 personnel killed, 0 survivors recovered. The asymmetry of the engagement defies historical naval combat ratios. At 6:15 a.m. hours, 41 minutes after initial contact, Rear Admiral Harrington transmits her action report through encrypted channels to U.S. Central Command in Tampa, Florida. The report's conclusions are stark. Iran executed a coordinated naval strike designed to inflict catastrophic damage on American carrier operations in the Persian Gulf. American integrated air defense, enabled by decades of technological investment and tactical doctrine refinement, achieved near-total defensive success. The engagement validates every controversial defense budget allocation since the Cold War's conclusion. Critics who questioned a Ford-class carrier's $13 billion price tag now confront empirical evidence. The ship's electromagnetic catapults, advanced radar systems, and expanded aviation fuel capacity enabled the rapid defensive response that prevented potential disaster. The tactical lessons cascade through military channels with brutal clarity. Iranian swarm tactics, long theorized as a potential carrier killer strategy, prove vulnerable to layered defense systems when those systems operate with adequate warning time and unrestricted rules of engagement. The engagement underscores the critical importance of early detection. The ANSPY-6 radar's detection of Iranian boats at 27 nautical miles provided the time-space cushion necessary for defensive measures to activate. Had detection occurred at 15 nautical miles, The outcome might have followed different trajectories. Had Iranian boats launched missiles immediately upon detection, rather than closing range first, American defensive systems would have faced compressed engagement timelines with potentially catastrophic results. Within 6 hours of the engagement, regional reactions begin. Saudi Arabia issues public statements supporting American defensive actions, framing the engagement as proof of Iranian aggression. United Arab Emirates officials, typically cautious in their public diplomacy, condemn Iranian recklessness. Turkey calls for immediate de-escalation, proposing emergency United Nations Security Council sessions. Russia and China issue carefully worded statements expressing concern while avoiding explicit condemnation of either party. The diplomatic language masks the strategic recalculation occurring in capitals across 3 continents. American military dominance in the Persian Gulf remains absolute, but Iran's willingness to accept catastrophic losses to inflict damage reveals a regime calculating survival through escalation, rather than accommodation. The engagement fundamentally reshapes the strategic calculus surrounding potential Iranian conflict. Military planners in the Pentagon and Central Command immediately revise their Operation O assumptions. The Iranian Navy, effectively neutralized in the 17-minute engagement, no longer represents a conventional threat to American carrier operations when those carriers operate with full defensive postures activated. But the engagement simultaneously reveals Iranian willingness to sacrifice hundreds of personnel in high-risk operations, suggesting future attacks might employ even more distributed tactics. Subsurface mines, underwater drones, proxy militia attacks on partner nation shipping. The Ford's victory solves one problem while illuminating a dozen others. President Trump, receiving briefing materials in the White House Situation Room at 6:47 a.m. hours Eastern Standard Time, issues immediate directives. The Ford Strike Group will maintain station in the Strait of Hormuz indefinitely, conducting freedom of navigation operations on a continuous basis. Additional carrier assets deploy from Norfolk and San Diego, establishing a 3-carrier presence in the Central Command area of responsibility for the first time since 2020. B-52 strategic bombers forward deployed to Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, their nuclear certification status deliberately emphasized in Pentagon press releases. A message requires no diplomatic subtlety. Iranian escalation will be met with overwhelming American force across all domains. The question of nuclear escalation, sensationalized in media coverage preceding the carrier deployment, finds its answer in the smoking waters of the Persian Gulf. Iran's conventional military capacity, when confronted with American technological superiority and operational competence, achieves tactical failure at strategic cost. A regime in Tehran faces brutal arithmetic. Continued conventional escalation guarantees additional catastrophic losses without inflicting meaningful damage on American forces. Nuclear escalation, while theoretically available through Iran's disputed enrichment programs, triggers immediate existential responses from American strategic forces and regional allies. The engagement demonstrates that Iran's window for effective military action closed years ago, a reality obscured by rhetorical bluster until tested against American steel. At 2:22 p.m. hours, 8 hours after the engagement, the Ford conducts normal flight operations. F/A-18 Super Hornets launch and recover in routine cycles, pilots practicing carrier landings in the same waters where Iranian boats burned that morning. A carrier's mess decks serve lunch for 400-500 crew members, conversation mixing combat debriefs with speculation about port calls and deployment extensions. On the flight deck, ordnance crews reload weapon stations, preparing for missions not yet ordered but inevitably coming. The Ford's presence in the Strait of Hormuz continues not through diplomatic negotiation, but through demonstrated capability measured in destroyed enemy vessels and unmarked American hulls. February 13th, 2026 will occupy entire chapters in future naval warfare doctrine manuals. 17 minutes that validated decades of strategic investment. 17 minutes that redefined deterrence in the world's most contested waterway. The strait remains open because the Gerald R. Ford made it so, one engagement at a time, with weapons that work and sailors who do not hesitate when the horizon erupts with fire.